we are moving to a parallel session which is somewhat similar to know all about the regional container market, India container report. As Prem said, our pie is 10% of India's throughput, and how do we get it bigger is our challenge as far as a Sri Lankan, I would ask. That was my interest. So the next session, talking of the India container report and transshipment challenges, I have again a close colleague of mine, Mr. Ravi Ramprasad, and I go a long way now in doing events in Sri Lanka, India, and Bangladesh at the moment, and plan to do more. Mr. Ravi Ramprasad is a media personality as a profession, and he's been very much in the Indian shipping industry, and his brainchild was Maritime Gateway, in South Asia's largest circulating shipping and logistics magazine, renowned for sectors, news, policy insights, market analysis. Anybody who I look at all his things and get so much insights. So I think he is a keen advocate about promoting this part of the world, its developments in all aspects, not just ports, but future fuels and backward integration to logistics. Name it, Ram writes. He's an editor, he writes. So he's also a policy pusher pushing from India's point of view. He talks about policy, what should be done, what is happening, and he has tremendous amount of information. And when I want some information about the region, I just call Ram and say, can you get some statistics for me on this? And there he comes. So he's going to be your moderator and the main presenter today, and he will invite his panel for the discussion to discuss about the numbers, what the numbers look like. Over to you, Mr. Ramprasad. Thank you. Please welcome Mr. Ramprasad.
Good afternoon. Louder, please, because afternoon is you try to get a nap. Once again, good afternoon. Good. Thanks for the kind introduction, Rohan. As he mentioned, our association goes a long way. And then now my responsibility is to justify half of what he mentioned in his welcome remarks. Greetings from India. So now what I'm going to do is, I have a presentation on the ports, India, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka, how they are faring in terms of numbers, and what are the new port projects that are coming up, what are the capacities that are coming up in the region. So I will present numbers, it's hardcore numbers. I'll try to make it interesting, but numbers sometimes can be boring. What we'll do is, the subsequent panel discussion, we will try to position on these numbers and then make it interesting. So I leave it to the panelists to analyze, to deep dive into the numbers, and then see what future holds for all of us in this region. So as mentioned, this is the publication that we have been doing from India for the last 16 years. We connect governments, trade associations, and industry through several seminars, conferences, not only in India. We have done conferences in Nepal, Bangladesh, and we have done in a lot of road shows for ports in India, up to China, in Hong Kong, South Korea, Vietnam, you name it. So that gave us a lot of not only connect, but a lot of access to information, access to people, so that keeps us going. We recently launched one more publication named future fuels, which talks about the new fuels that are coming into market, like ammonia, methanol, hydrogen, green hydrogen, which is going to be the future, not only for shipping, but for the rest of the transportation. So I'm really honored to be stand before you, and today we gather to discuss the critical challenges and opportunities facing the shipping and ports industries in 2024 and beyond. As we begin this session, we are reminded that we are at a pivotal moment in the evolution of global trade and logistics. The next couple of years will undoubtedly be marked by both challenges and breakthroughs that will shape the future of our sector. Many of the world's busiest ports continue to face congestion, delays, and a lack of infrastructure capacity to handle growing trade volumes. The expansion and modernization of ports to accommodate larger vessels and higher cargo volumes require significant investments. As we gather to discuss the future of port shipping and transshipment hubs, there is no denying that we are at crossroads. The landscape of global trade is evolving at an unprecedented pace. And with that change comes a range of questions about how we can maintain efficiency and stability in a world that is becoming more complex. One of the most pressing concerns in the shipping industry today is whether we are heading towards chaos. As mega vessels grow ever larger, port congestion becomes more frequent, and new services rapidly reshape shipping networks. It's easy to wonder, will our systems be able to cope, or will we find ourselves overwhelmed by the very forces that are driving change? These challenges present us not only obstacles, but with opportunities. Opportunities to innovate, to collaborate across borders, to invest in the future of port shipping, and to work together towards solutions that benefit our industries, the global economy, and the planet. During the panel discussion, our expert speakers will unpack these challenges, these developments, to better understand what is at stake and how we can navigate the challenges ahead. So, the maritime industry plays a vital role in the economic development of any country. It generates economic activity and employment in both the shipping and port sectors. It is also a major contributor to the economy of many coastal and island nations. That is why we need to look at how GDP growth is projected across South Asian nations. So if you look at the numbers, South Asia is expected to grow 6.4%. Most of the countries are doing well, doing better than expected. The recovery is fast. Only Bangladesh is expected to slow because of the political issues that they have faced recently. So this is the port development South Asia put together. The capacities within South Asia is projected to increase by 34%, which is 16.1 million TEUs. It will reach 63.3 million TEUs in 2028. So if you look at the graph, all the countries, the port capacity is on the rise. So primarily the port infrastructure, the growth is coming from India, as even earlier panel also discussed. It contributes 24% of the port development. PSA Mumbai, APMT Mumbai, Navasheva, all expansion programs are there. I will give you the details more. Again, in Bangladesh also, the capacities, 3 more terminals, they are coming up with a huge infrastructure. So when we talk about India, everybody looks at how the ports are developing, but now there is a vision, there is a strong policy drive from the government. Before we discuss the port development in India, we need to understand India's grand maritime vision, which is comprehensive strategy aimed at enhancing the nation's maritime infrastructure, security, and economic growth. The vision is articulated through several key initiatives. Earlier, Jonathan also mentioned Sagarmala. First, it came in 2000, Sagarmala program, which initiated with a focus to port-led development, including logistics. Then in 2021, the Maritime India Vision 2030 was conceptualized. Again, now the current focus is Amrit Kal. So the Honorable Prime Minister of India wanted India to grow by it reaches the 100 years of independence by 2047. This is how we look at the economy, the infrastructure, per capita income, GDP, exports, FDI has to grow. So these are the targets, and all the ministries are working with a single goal to achieve these things. And Gati Shakti is a very wonderful program launched by the Government of India. It is a national master plan for multimodal connectivity. So the 1.2 trillion budget allocated for the infrastructure is singularly managed, cutting across the red tapeism. All the ministries are unified. There is a portal through which all the developments are monitored, all the approvals are done. You can see the maps there where the infrastructure is coming. The tenders are released based on that. So it's a unified program. That is how the Gati Shakti is driving the infrastructure connectivity across all the transport segments. So what is the port development under the Amrit Kal? So all the ports, the master plans that has to be in synergy with the 2047 vision, they are looking at 10,000 million tons per annum handling capacity for all the ports put together. For these, clusters have been identified. There are 4 clusters. JNPT is one, Kandla, Tuticorin, and Paradeep. These are the clusters where more than 300 million tons per annum capacity they are expected to reach, and also to reduce the turnaround time of the ships at these ports. And also we have this Green Ports initiative, the 60% of electricity via renewables, and there is a Green Tugs program, and 3 ports have been identified as hubs for green hydrogen. So all these initiatives are combined for a holistic development of port sector in India. So as part of this Amrit Kal vision, the highlight for us, what is interesting is India is very keen to increase the transshipment share, which is 32% now, to 95% by 2047. We will be discussing more on this going forward. So again, the efficiency of logistics in India, which is an indicator that World Logistics Index, we have moved up on some of the parameters. A couple of them are still yet to make, but now there is an integrated approach to improve the logistics index parameters. If you can see customs, so customs are also gearing up to speed up the processes, and then technology is being implemented heavily for the tracking and tracing of containers, even the vehicle movement, using by IoTs, even artificial intelligence. So when we come to transshipment hubs, so everybody knows about the Vizhinjam, which started recently. So the idea is 1 million TEU capacity will go up to 6 million TEUs. Already 23 berths shipped in October alone. 1.08 lakh TEUs handled so far. With second berth ready, port would be able to handle 0.5 lakh to 1 lakh TEUs per month. And their ambition is to clock 5 lakh TEUs this financial year against a target of 60,000 TEUs, which they kept originally. So that is how, and MSC primarily driving the traffic to this port. Then another transshipment hub is the Galathea Bay, which you can see it is located in Andaman. Government announced it as the 13th major port. You know that there are 12 government ports so far. Now this will be the 13th port, major port. It's strategically located, proximity to transshipment terminals like Singapore, Klang, and Colombo, with an investment of 4 billion USD. This transshipment hub will come up. Phase 1 is proposed to be commissioned in the year 2028 with a handling capacity of 4 million TEUs. For this, already expression of interest has been floated. A couple of international companies have shown interest to take this project. Another major port that is coming up on the west coast is Vadhavan. This we call a mega port in India. As you can see, it is 70 kilometers north of Mumbai. 25 January, they want to start the construction. I think the way things are going, we already received the environmental clearance for this. Only thing is to call for operators to build and operate. And this will be built with 10 billion USD, the project outlay. The main idea is to look at the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor to serve that, because India is very keen to develop that corridor. So this is the major port that is coming up. So this is the graphic which indicates the volumes that the container traffic that is being handled at Indian ports. Now, the first 6 months, we have continued to have the growth moment. Now the 8% growth over last year. And as we have seen for the last several years, private ports are driving most of the container volumes. This we do every year, the ranking of all the Indian container terminals based on the actual throughput that they handle. So the Mundra continues to hold the numero uno position, number 1. But if you look at APM terminals drop down to 3rd position. Now the the PSA terminal at Mumbai has risen to the 2nd spot. So that is gaining some traction. Now when we look at Bangladesh, Bangladesh recently has seen some volatility in their container volumes. Basically, the RMG exports taken a hit with the political instability that they have seen recently. We have noticed that Tirupur in India has gained that, took that as an advantage, and then Tirupur has a strong belt for with the textile, huge textile mills. So they have entered to that spot, and then now we see garment exports starting happening from Tirupur. So the Chittagong port is expected to handle 3.2 million TEUs this year, 2024, with 9.2% year-on-year growth. But still, there are some delays, berthing delays happening, 6 to 8 days waiting time. So this is a bay terminal. This is coming up in Bangladesh with 2 container terminals and multi-purpose terminal and gas and oil terminal. See, this is a Mongla port. There are already PPP projects awarded. India is building 2 jetties and China is building 2 jetties here. So the idea is to handle 4 million TUs of 4 million metric tons of cargo and 800,000 TUs of containers a year. And the third one is Patenga Container Terminal. The Red Sea Gateway Terminal operates this government-built terminal. It's the first foreign operator which entered into Bangladesh. So with this, Chittagong Port's capacity also grows up. Now, it's like taking coal to New India. Colombo numbers, I need not tell you. All of you know all the terminal operators are here. So these are the numbers. So the growth times to be very interesting. There is a 10% increase compared to the 2023, the first half of 2024. All CICT, SLPA, Sri Lankan ports, and SAGT contributing to the growth. These are the percentages, and these are the throughputs that they have handled the first year. So this is something a shipping perspective. So shipping lines likely to continue to divert via the Cape of Good Hope through much of 2025. That will manage the overcapacity. But pre-berthing waiting time in September was very high compared to year on year. So these are the percentages in Oceania and North America and Africa, how the percentages look like. Freight rate index. So after peaking in the late 2021 to mid 2022, rates continued to erode through 2023, but again, 2024 January year high. How the freight rates are going to be will be discussed in the panel discussion. So liner shipping connectivity index. India and Sri Lanka are the best in this region. India is at 14th best connected country and Sri Lanka at 22nd. These are the liner connectivity in South Asia. Thank you. So now it's time for me to invite our panelists. Just let me look at the names. Like Mr. Rodrigues, I don't have elaborate profiles of the speakers. As Rohan said, you can access them online. So can I invite Shailesh Garg, Director, Drewry Shipping Consultants from India. Ladies and gentlemen, invite them with a big round of applause. They are here to Ananda Premachandra, Industry Specialist, for one more time. You're the most wanted panelist. Then Lal Veerasinghe, Additional Managing Director, Operations, Sri Lankan Ports Authority. Mr. Ramesh David, CEO, South Asia Gateway Terminals. Mr. Chandima Senavaratne, Senior Deputy GM, Commercial and Marketing, Colombo, CICT. And Mr. Leong Hong Yong, Chief Executive Officer, Far Shipping, Singapore. I'm going to stand. Because I'm the lawyer, I'm going to prosecute all of you here. Anyway, jokes apart. Though I have been running this publication for the last 16 years, I am no shipping or a port expert. These are the experts. So my job is easier. I will ask all relevant, irrelevant questions. It is for them to answer. and keep you engaged. So if the session is not interesting, it is their responsibility, not mine. With that, Ryder, let me start with this discussion with a very basic premise. Now, around us, we see geopolitical tensions rising everywhere, and we have mega port development, as you have just seen, and freight rates volatile, then mega ships being built year after year. Carrier networks strategies are changing. So, overall, how do you describe these events that are happening around us? Do they look chaotic? Do they look interesting? Do they look challenging? I want to start from my friend Shailesh.
Thank you, Mr. Ramprasad. I think this is the most critical and interesting question. It's challenging, no doubt, but I think this last 3 years we have seen this happening, and now everybody has seen it as a new normal, as the phrase goes. So I think everybody is now prepared for that, preparing for that, learned from the past 3 years, have managed their strategies accordingly, mitigating, you can say, strategies being developed, which includes redundancy in the system. But yeah, it's causing some problems and hiccups in the whole system, and which is not good. But I think this is here to stay for some time at least. That's how we see, at least for next one to 2 years, no doubt about it. So we'll have to prepare for that and be ready. And I think with the IT intervention and other you can say, strategies adopted by diversifying the supply chains and other things, I think the initial what we saw in 2021 was a wake-up call. And since then, I think people have made it more robust. So the challenges are there, but I think the impact is less intense now and probably in the future coming times. That's what I take on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll come back to you to describe the key challenges.
Sure.
Premadasa. No, he just took a moment to structure his answer.
I never expected to answer, so if you look at shipping as an independent business, that business also has a way of adapting to changing environments and situations. So they take decisions to survive and thrive. The challenges to the ports that choose to serve them, to find strategies to serve them because they are the masters, they give you the business, and also survive and thrive. So that is the challenge for ports. We have not this is not the first time that shipping lines and the routes and strategies change. We have seen it happening over the last many decades. Mm-hmm. They change to suit changing trade environment as well as changing geopolitics, as you rightly said. See what happens in Middle East today. Thanks to the war over there, the entire traffic route has changed. Some people gained, some ports gained, some ports lost. As in overall picture, the importers and exporters lost because lines had to recover their costs, therefore the freight had to go up, right? Now these are not happenstances. So long as people have greed, wars will be there. And shipping will have to find ways of coping because more than 90% of the needs are provided by shipping, right? So ports as partners of this maritime chain from end to end should dance to the tune of the lines, not only for their own survival, but for the survival of the entire business. Mm-hmm. That's how I see it. So the victims are ports in this because you have chosen a business that depends on shipping lines' decision to use you, if you are not a gateway port. This is in respect of hubs that are not gateways. In respect of gateways, it's the other way around, right? Lines will go looking for ports that would generate freight, right? So, if you're talking about hub ports have to dance to the tune of the lines, and the lines have to dance to the tune of the cargo generating markets to a certain extent. And all of us have to dance to the tune of geopolitics, because we don't decide who will wage war against whom. So I see all of us as victims, not as, we all try to survive in these difficult times.
Thank you. So going by what he said, we have 3 more victims here. I request Lal to respond.
Yes, once we have become a victim, right? So we have to find a way out. So all the ports in the world and terminals are getting themselves geared to face this obvious outcome, actually, the situation. So, like our former guru, Mr. Premachandra, correctly said, that its pressure is on mainly the ports and terminals. Especially the way that your presentation has clearly indicated that what level of capacity is building up in our region. So it is obvious, obviously there is more and more pressure is building up for the terminals. So when we go for negotiations also, shipping lines, they are very much in trying to negotiate with a position of strength. So whenever you get the overcapacity, it has virtually become the buyer's market, especially because of these excess capacity. So, but however, it is obvious that it depends on the level of service we provide, and the total logistic solution we provide to our customers will, end of the day, will decide, the destiny of and their market position of the respective terminal or port. Thank you.
Romesh,
Thank you, Ravi.
I also want you to say, not only being a victim, what is you are trying to do to not to be victimized?
Yeah, so I think, there are victims and victims and victims. The good thing for us, victims, is that some of these victims have very deep pockets and huge war chests. So I think we've seen a time in the last 5 years that container liner shipping has never experienced before. We've seen an immense consolidation of victims who have now turned into very rich victims. So we have the top 10 lines handling 82-83% of the world's cargo. We have them also having made unprecedented profits. I think in the last 5 years they've made more. Shipping has probably made more money in the last 5 years than they have in the previous 75 years. There's also been a great concentration of this income among the larger shipping groups. So in that context, whilst I agree fully with what Prem said, I think the industry per se is at a level of health in this chaos that has probably not been seen for a while. Hence hence there is some underlay to the massive infrastructure drive that's going on. So let's take this region as a whole. And then segueing into the geopolitics of it, that is also driving, the whole India-China equation. That has driven growth in Sri Lanka, if you look at it. The whole, if you look at the string of pearls around, in Pakistan, and then again, the likelihood of Myanmar. So there's that has driven a lot of India's thought processes, I think, in terms of its own port capacity. But having said all of that, I think the greatest examples of how no capacity can be too much capacity is two things. One is the fact that Singapore, PTP, Portland all grew, and the volumes, their transshipment volumes is 95% is transshipment, very much like here. It's a capacity-led growth, so it feeds on itself to a certain extent, and I think the realignment of, or some of the rethinking in liner shipping networks or network philosophies that are happening, if the Maersk, Hapag-Lloyd, the Gemini Alliance, if Gemini actually yields the type of efficiencies and on-time performance that they're aiming for, that'll be again a great boost in the whole concept of transshipment. So I think there are, whilst yes, there are hard infrastructure like ports are not mobile, they're not easily redeployable. There is a fairly solid foundation on the back of growth in the region, on the back of growth in India, and on the back of trade growth that we see evidenced by the confidence that lines have. If you look at the world's order book today, 25% of the order book alone is 25% of the current fleet. And that order book is predominantly big ships, 14,000 plus. So I think there are all these series of factors that underlie and underpin the potential, particularly in this part of the world. Thank you. Just one other thing, Ravi, I noticed in your presentation about Colombo's capacity being 10.7 million, it'll actually be almost 15 million.
Oh, okay.
Because in the next 2 years, we will double. CWIT and CIC and ECT will
ECT
add
coming up.
7 to 7.5 million TEUs of capacity to our current
Okay.
7.5 or 8 million.
Thank you, Ravi, for that question. So I think almost all the panelists have touched upon the capacity of the boats. So I will make it in a different way. So let us think about 2023, end of 2023. The rates were crashing down, and nobody was expecting this calamity to happen in the Red Sea. And during that time, everybody was talking about the trade tariff war. The rates were crashing. So fortunately, we had a big order book. And I consider this order book, the mega vessels, as a blessing for the industry, and also the capacity as a blessing. Now, if there was no capacity at that time, and we don't have capacity to run the shipping routes in this time, so the topics that we might have discussed today would have been different if there is no capacity in the market. So the mega vessels that are coming in will be injected to this main trade shipping route, and that has benefited all the trade, and including the shippers. So otherwise, they have paid something like COVID level. So what I think is, it's a blessing actually. So the trade will continue like this, and it is quite positive for everybody.
As a service provider, how do you look at it? I'm asking. They must have heard that.
Right. Okay. I'm sorry, just to give you a background, I'm Lian from Fast Shipping. We are a feeder operator, essentially concentrating on the Bay of Bengal, particularly Upper Bay of Bengal. So it was very interesting to hear some comments about Bangladesh earlier. And from where we operate, also Calcutta, we are very much involved in Calcutta and Haldia. So as a feeder operator, so we are spoke to the hub, right? These are the hubs and I'm the spoke. Normally there's one hub and more spokes, right? But now it seems like there's more hubs than spokes, right? But in any case, I mean, I see a very upside to Colombo with the increased capacity. Like Dashma earlier said, the growth has stagnant, and that was, personal view was that because the capacity was reached, yeah, so you needed more capacity. And with this CWIT coming up, I think it's a very welcome increased capacity for the Port of Colombo. Not sure if it's a welcome competitor for SEGT or CICT, but I certainly, as a user, port user, I certainly welcome the added capacity. Right. Thank you.
Okay. In the first round of responses, what we have seen is there are challenges, and ports have to dance to the tune of shipping lines. There are increasing pressures on terminals. This is the gist of the bit. But what we need to deep dive into, what actually ports should be doing, the hub ports like Colombo. See, one is the pressure coming from the neighborhood. Again, the changing philosophies of our strategies of shipping lines. So what do you think is the right strategy for Colombo? Yeah.
I think not only Colombo, but all the ports which are in this, you can say, in the transshipment business per se, and, but applicable for all the ports also, is that now shipping lines, as rightly said, ports are dancing to the tune of shipping lines. So as they are dictating terms, so ports have to also align with their requirements and strategies. So shipping lines are looking to bring down their cost, whether it is network cost or whichever way. So ports have to see how best they can align to that in whichever. Now this is a bit of a tricky situation, because for that they will have to invest in the port. And so at one point we are saying that you have overcapacity, there is a pressure on the pricing, your margins are coming down, but if you don't do that anyway, you are going away from the business, losing market share. So one is necessary to align with that, see how best you can reduce their cost, build the capacity. One way is to improve your efficiencies so that cost related to inefficiencies, turnaround times and all that are reduced. Invest in IT, which can further help in maximizing your productivity, thus helping the shipping lines. And second aspect, which now most of the shipping lines are looking, it's decarbonization. So how ports can help and align with that. So definitely shipping lines will look for ports which could help them, whether it is alternative fuel bunkering or port-based electric supply or whichever way. So I think these are some of the objectives which most of the big shipping lines are following, and ports will have to align it if they have to work along with them. And probably some shipping lines will be ready to pay some premium, if not more, to see that they work with these ports. So I think to differentiate with others. So I think, but the challenge is that you will have to invest and then see that you are able to then gain business. I think that's where the trick is, and many ports are going ahead with that, hoping that it will help to maintain the market share, increase the market share. But it's a challenging thing. So maybe more planning is required, very, very closely working with the shipping lines, understanding their future plans, and then going ahead. Just building the capacity without, I think, this coordination may lead to a lot of challenges in the future.
So taking a cue from there, all of us talking about capacities. We need more capacities. Colombo needs more capacities. So capacities will come. Maybe delayed by a year or two, capacities will come. But only capacities will suffice to meet the future demands, or you have to do a bit more?
I totally agree with this, where he ended his final statement. Providing capacity isn't sufficient for a port to survive. If you look at Port of Colombo, having seen the presentation you made and the alternative locations appearing in the region, offering hub port services, if all these things are going to take place, then Colombo as hub port running now should take into consideration the market size, the growth of the market in the next decade or so, and the share of that market Colombo can capture. As I think all the participants are here, so I stated at the last P1 session also that Colombo's share of the total Indian throughput, gateway throughput, is only 10%. Colombo survives with that. But in order to go to the next level, Colombo has to use its strategic location to look for alternative markets, right? I am going to give you an example of what this strategic location means. Look at what happened to Hong Kong. With the gateway cargo moving direct from China to elsewhere, China opening up deep water ports that can cater to the largest ships flying in any route, all Chinese ports started making headway, and Hong Kong port, lost its primary state from number one, and started tumbling to lower levels in the container port league. But Singapore thrived when Hong Kong only survived thanks to the close proximity to the market. Singapore, being far away from all those ports in a different location, thrived thanks to the distance. Now, this is, I think, this is comparable to Colombo's location. Colombo is too close to India. Therefore, as we have seen in the past, direct services will grow. India is coming up with deep water ports in both sides of the peninsula. East coast ports are getting deeper and providing with better capacity like NO and so on. It's a matter of time before they are capable of handling the 24,000 TEU ship and generating sufficient cargo for to justify a ship's call, direct. So direct services will take a major volume, and the transshipment will, volumes and shares will reduce. This will compel Colombo to look at alternative markets, and it's ideally located because it's away from the major production area, that is China. Sufficiently distant to offer relay services to where? Now here we have to look at what is happening elsewhere in the globe without limiting our scope to this subcontinental region. Thanks to my exposure to East Africa today, I am aware that East African ports are going in for deep water capacity, enhancing their shipboard capacity to handle larger ships. If I take the example of Dar es Salaam, which is now undergoing refurbishment, they have already completed 550 meters of deep water berth. In January, February, they will get into the balance part of refurbishment, and they are, as a partner to that, we are planning of handling ships up to 18,000 TEU capacity. Never heard of that part of the world. We are designing the berths for the next 50 years for that great continent to face the future. You know, what that tells us, this region that is famous for holding ships for 10, 20, 30 days outside ports will allow larger ships to come in with larger loads. Where will those larger loads be picked up? So there's a need for a hub to relay to this big continent. So I personally feel, this is my personal feeling, because I am right now, I have spent something like 290 days in Dar es Salaam, getting involved in this big exercise of catering to the need of 5 landlocked countries in this big continent. You can understand the enormity of the traffic that can be generated through this port. All these countries like Rwanda, Burundi, Malawi, and so on, depend totally on this port. So similarly, West Africa has certain advantages that we can look at. So to me, there is opportunity in this challenge. The challenge of new hub ports appearing in this region tells us that we should go to the next level of being a mega hub, that is the level of handling relays. So that's my version of how we should face this changing scene.
Thank you. Romesh, Since Premadasa mentioned about the mega ports coming up in India and how deep they are, what is future going to be. So is that a concern for the terminals in Colombo? Do you see it as a competition eating away into the volumes, or do you see it can complement the overall South Asian trade volumes?
I think, without doubt, I am of the view that it is complementary. There is an element of competition, and I think it would be foolish for ports like Colombo to disregard that element of competition, because, like Prem said, there'll be greater and greater direct services, and we'll have to tick a number of boxes in order to stay relevant. And I think primary among those is something that Prem talked about earlier, which is aligning and alliances with shipping lines. Because ports more and more are no longer simply a supplier to a shipping line. They are an integral part of that line's efficiency and that line's product. And when you have lines, major groupings of lines offering services that hinge on the efficiency of that product, and that product hinges around hubs, then it becomes much more integral to the business of a line than simply being a port. So I think that's one box. The second thing, again, Shailesh talked about is decarbonization on two levels. One is certainly shipping lines don't want to work at ports that are going to add to their carbon footprint. They instead will look to work with ports that either take it away completely, have zero footprint, or in fact are accretive to reducing their carbon footprint. And I think therein lies opportunity not just for ports, but also for economies or countries like Sri Lanka, governments, where the power sector then dovetails with the port sector, where we are able to, we have the opportunity to have a completely green grid. And a completely green grid, then you have, today we have 400 container ships passing through 400 ships passing through Colombo monthly. Very likely that's going to double over the next 5 years. And if all of those ships then plug into green power, that's going to take a big chunk out of their own carbon footprints. So that's the second thing. The third thing is visibility and through digitalization and creating that efficiency in the hub. John referred to that in terms of visibility throughout, where you have, we have used the advances in AI and digitization to make that visibility and efficiency far greater. So I think just looking at it from the point of view of pure capacity and competition alone is not enough. But again, I believe that underlying all of this is the ports will need to align themselves with shipping lines and with the carriers and with the carrier groups. Because ultimately that's, if you have to take that customer-first, customer-centric approach if we are to really get to where we want to be. Thank you.
Anyone would like to add to that so that I can move on to the next question? Lal or Chandima? Okay. Shailesh, this question is to you. So now we have seen transshipment hubs coming up in India and mega ports being planned. So where are the volumes going to come up actually? Where are the container volumes? Because you keep the numbers, you know how things are working out. So is it building capacities ahead of demand, or do we see a consistent growth that there is a logical strategy behind these port development?
So talking about India particularly, so we have always said and felt that we have lagged behind the development. So generally the capacity or demand follows the capacity, and whereas in India we see generally the capacity following the demand. So whenever there is a congestion, something we do some, and then the new capacity, by the time we develop something, it's full. And it's just not on the ports. If you see, you must have seen in Delhi, Gurgaon, the highway which was built for, I think, 20 years, and it was full in 5 years. and we are still building it. And now we had metros. Metros got full in 5 years. And so we are just chasing the demand, basically. So I think, so one change is that, yes, we are trying to be ahead of demand, and that is one possibly good change. Second is that we see this as a catalyst to the growth. So I think that is something we see, that if we build the port, then we can use it as a lever to propel the growth, which could be port-based or in the hinterland or whatever. So this is seen as a catalyst to whatever we are trying to do, what numbers you showed about Indian economy growing. We have a plan for next few years, 5 trillion economy, make in India, and various things. So I think without having this capacity, it's going to be difficult. So, but we know that India has got its own challenges. We do plan, and then implementation is a bigger challenge, but hoping that that would change. So this is necessary for that. And definitely the volumes will come from India as because what we are also trying to do is to position against China as an alternative. So if we don't build the capacity, the investors will not come, because that's one thing we are looking at, whether we can handle that kind of volume. Because what we are again seeing the challenge in other Southeast Asian countries, where Vietnam or other smaller countries where manufacturers are trying to go, they don't have the enough capacity to replicate what China is doing. I think it's not easy what China has done in 20 years. So I think we need to invest and then really see how it turns out. So I think this is in anticipation of that. And second, some of this transshipment thing, it's more strategic at this point, I would say, because transshipment doesn't make money, you know. But now with all these geopolitical scenarios changing and everything, this is also seen as a strategic option for us to have better control over our supply chains. So I think that is being seen from that, especially the new one in Andaman Nicobar. I would say that's no way somebody can say it's financially feasible or commercially feasible. It has to be very strategic outlook to support that, and that's why government is ready to give a support for that development, the kind of money they're trying to spend. And third, as a region, I think we are attractive as India, because as we just mentioned, the gateway is very important for shipping lines. We in the region have the biggest gateway traffic. So if I have to bring India traffic to any other hub port, why not I have a transshipment in India and then bring some other transshipment volume rather, so I save on my network cost. So I think from that perspective, anyway, India has that advantage of a big gateway market. So that's how I see it, yeah.
Thank you. Earlier, one of the speakers mentioned about Gemini. So the Gemini collaboration started looking at hub ports, and I think Colombo is one of the top 10 ports that they want to zero on. So what are the expectations of all the transshipment terminals in Colombo? Are you geared up to receive Gemini, and how it would benefit these terminals? No, this is for 3 of you.
Yeah. Let me start and maybe Mr. Ramesh will continue thereafter. So it's actually, as you correctly mentioned, we are lucky that Colombo is one of the 12 hub ports in their Gemini network.
Close.
So obviously, yes, there's a big demand for Colombo to offer mega berths. So when they are operating this hub and spoke model, basically the port call size is massive. So they are planning to do more moves because there are more feeder volumes to come in and more discharging to happen, and also more loading to happen. So the port call size is going to increase. So definitely there is a pressure on the terminal side to give more equipment, because they are running on a tight schedule, and the port stay would be critical. So we need to turn the vessel faster, and there will be more requirement, more demand for the equipment. So they will require more resources. So in that case, yes, there's a challenge on the terminal. There will be big pressure on the terminal. And also one other reason that they have selected Colombo as a mega hub or important hub in their network is the well-established feeder network. So we have a strong feeder network to the east coast of India, Bangladesh, and also to the west coast. So there will be more feedering will happen, and the current feeder network they have also considered. So that is why I think, in my opinion, they have considered Colombo as a major hub in their network.
I was wondering whether you had some news that we hadn't yet been told, but I mean, I do. I think in the end, in the short term, there will be some internecine warfare between the terminals in Colombo. We have two large deep water terminals that are going to come on stream over the next 2 years. And certainly by the middle of next year, CICT will lose the monopoly it had on deep water, on deep draft ships. So in the short term, and I think 2 to 3 years is relatively short term in the scheme of ports, when you're investing $700 million to $1 billion, there will be some squabbling and moving between the terminals here. Hopefully, we might be net beneficiaries because we are not in the reckoning for these the deep draft ships. But I think in the end, the overarching situation is that the competition is not in Colombo. The competition is to stay relevant against other hub ports in the region and even further afield, like Dubai, like Abu Dhabi, like Singapore, like Malaysia. And I think that will find its level after a couple of years.
Without touching on already addressed things, I would a little more concentrate on the challenge. One of the biggest challenge that the Colombo terminals will face is that the ITT, inter-terminal trucking. That has to be more streamlined, and we have to digitalize them. So tracking system has to be introduced, and that is one of the areas I think we have key area of improvement that we have to make, in addition to the enhancing the service level that we are already providing to our customers. So we know that Gemini is it is handled by two biggest lines in the world. It's a challenge. Actually, it's a challenge, but it's a challenge that we have to accept with both hands, because it itself indicates a level of trust and the confidence that these two biggest lines are keeping on Colombo. And I think that jointly we will be able to make it happen, give a better service. Because individually we can't do, like I said, dependency is very high. The feeders has to serve the mainliners, then we have to exchange boxes. So it's actually, usually we do promote Port of Colombo. Although we have a lot of synergies that we have started by working together. Thank you.
Good spirit on record. Next question is to Lee, Premadasa and Shailesh. See, Gemini is talking about the service reliability. When globally the reliability across all container, ocean container stands at 53, Gemini is talking about 90% service reliability. So do you think it is possible? Or what kind of pressures will come to maintain that 90% of reliability? Yeah, three of you.
No, I think it's difficult, no doubt about it, especially in the current scenario where we have so much challenges and looking at the geopolitical scenario, what the changes shipping lines have to go. So in those times, I think keeping that 90% is a challenge. But we know that Maersk was always one of the better ones. So when they came together with MSC, I think that was one of the questions how they will manage it. So I think when HAPEC, the new Gemini, I think the culturally the two lines will be aligned to this, and that would be their differentiating factor. I think they'll work hard towards that, because as I said, in today's time, unreliability has become a normal now. So if they can prove and give it to the customers, I think they will be able to win the market share in that way. So I think difficult, but I'm not part of that and I don't know how, but I know Maersk has been doing it in the past and being better than others, so I hope they can do that, but I'm sure somebody is there from the Merck, they can answer.
Okay. You would like to answer?
Let me add something to what Sailesh mentioned. So
Keep it
coming
closer.
From 53, coming from 53 to 90% will be an enormous task. So as he correctly mentioned, it is not easy. So you will have to have everything in place. So what basically I see is there will be three components that they will look at. The first thing is the port or the hub port, efficiency of the hub port. And then secondly, the feeder network, how strong is the feeder network and how reliable is the feeder network. And thirdly, how much resources that port or the hub port can offer them. So these three components they will have to consider when they are looking for hub or going to the 90% of reliability. If any disruption happen in single point, there will be a big impact on their reliability.
Managing windows and what kind of pressures we see.
I mean, one of the things that Lau touched upon was ITT, which is has always been very troubling for me, because I see a lot of, port users seek efficiencies, whether that's time or whether that's cost. I mean, they always seek efficiencies in terms of selection of hub ports or feeder network. Right? But I do, as port user, I do see a lot of wastage of resources in this ITT, and particularly for us as a feeder when we berth our ship at JCT, and the main lines are berthed at either CICT or SCGT. 100% of our boxes are actually ITT across the other two terminals. And likewise, when we are loading the other, it's also 100% that is discharged from the mainline ships are actually ITT across the JCT for our loading. So in a way, I was looking into, if with the added capacity, I was hoping that the feeders and the lines are actually more aligned to the terminal to reduce this ITT. Yeah? So on the other subject of about achieving this 90% apart from feeder network, apart from what I call port efficiencies or port reliability, there was a lot of hardware stress on how many cranes we put upon, but there's some software that is lacking. I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, there was some political instability in Sri Lanka, and some lines were talking about moving their hubs somewhere else. And I recall these three gentlemen, Lau, Romesh, and Chandima, were all going up to Tuticorin trying to reassure the trade, please bring back everything that's back to normal. So we shouldn't take all this also for granted, yeah? Political stability and political will to improve the port, yeah?
I will just have one more question to this gentleman, and then I will throw open for questions from audience. See, we talked about improving our capacities in Colombo, adding IT, information technology to service, all that is fine. But Colombo had this vision of not just remaining as a transshipment hub, to transform into maritime hub with lot of services, value addition, re-export. I just want to understand, where are we on that grand vision?
Yeah, good question, Ram. So, like you correctly said, that being a maritime hub is will not be sufficient in future actually to face the challenges, because we have to go in line with the government policies aspect as well, because government is having a broader perspective, and to encourage having logistic centers. And in fact, we have already signed an agreement with CICT sponsored South Asia Logistics Center that is within the Port of Colombo in the South Port area, and there is some other land where we have already called for tenders, to develop that, develop it to make it a logistics center. And there are some other lands where we have the port master plan identified as the areas that can be developed as logistics centers and value-added. Those who can make use of that for the value-adding on report trade and all other aspect in multi-country consolidation and so on. So plans are underway, but you know that we have our COVID and then the our crisis, all that had made little, forced us to, we couldn't achieve our set targets, but we are with the new government also very keen on, following up it and then promote these aspect, the logistic aspect of the maritime area. So I think that we are very positive in that sense that we'll be able to attract a lot of PPPs and private investments to develop that logistic area. Thank you.
Quickly.
Yeah,
Less
I
than a
think
minute.
there's a whole raft of stuff in addition to working the cargo that's inside the container, which countries like Dubai, like the UAE and Singapore have done very well. But beyond that, to become a true maritime center, something like Singapore, we have a whole list of things that we need to do, starting with legislation, enabling legislation, offering additional services. And I think with the advent of things like Port City, we have an opportunity to create ship finance, an environment of insurance finance, with the potential for green energy and electricity. Green electricity, we have the potential to plug into the green fuel supply chain, where you see ports like Singapore and Rotterdam have already got into it. Colombo is a natural fit into that. If we have a surplus of green energy, and we could have a surplus of green energy very easily if the power sector was developed. We are sitting at the foot of probably the world's largest middle class, cruise tourism, and tourism is a big number. So cruise and cruise shipping. So we got bunkering, we got tourism, we've got obviously containers and logistics. And then you have things like crewing. Sri Lanka has a natural, we are a hub in the sense of, for crewing, we need to create the seafaring industry here. There's a rich tradition of seafarers which can easily be augmented here. Things like ship supplies, so spares, again, we are well located with the growth of tourism. We'll have more flights coming in. Air connectivity will become better. We become, like Singapore, like Dubai, we become a natural catchment hub for ship services, shipboard services. So I think there needs to be policy, government policy. It's very encouraging that the new government have listed that that maritime and logistics are one of the 5 core sectors, core pillars that the government has identified for Sri Lanka's growth. So yes, I think there needs to be a will.
That's a long list. Okay. Questions from audience? 2 quick questions. Can we have mic there?
Really appreciated, Prem. Even after 35 years, you are still fighting for finding a proper solution for handling casualties in Sri Lanka. And I have 2 questions. One is related to the transshipments. With all increased capacities in India and around Sri Lanka, so between Singapore and Sri Lanka, when we increase the capacities, as we all know, in Singapore and Port Kelang, there are many shipping lines invested on their own terminals. So how are you going to attract them to these new terminals instead of going into their own terminals and operating and bringing into the new government terminals? And my second question is, as Prem said earlier, shipping terminals has to dance according to the tune of lines. That is because of the terminal operators are not coming from the shipping lines. So if we have to choose between the investors, whom we should be preferred for Colombo, whether terminal operators to invest or shipping lines to invest on their own terminals.
I will answer the second question. Okay. I think I have already mentioned this in my previous statement I made about being in a strategic location wouldn't ensure that we would have the traffic flowing in. It is necessary to have strategic partnerships as well. So strategic partnership has to be with the parties that control the traffic flow. So in that I agree. The many hub ports have followed this at a particular stage of development because the lines would like to have control over their destiny to a great extent in order to make a big commitment. So I mentioned about the ability of Colombo to move to the next level by being a relay port, but that would greatly depend on how much control the lines would have over their operations in that particular hub port, because line committing relay volumes is committing a huge transaction volume to that particular port. Without a proper commitment and control over it, I don't think the lines would agree. So we are at crossroads. We have come to a place where the strategic partnership has become a necessity for us to move forward. And to strengthen that, I would say that anybody with funds could invest them on hub ports. There are so many strategic locations. If you look at, en route to en route to the receiving market, right? But those are not going to become hub ports simply because they are strategically located, or somebody is interested in investing huge amounts of money in there. That would become strategic only if they are selected by the lines to make a huge commitment. We have seen a place in Middle East, Salalah, becoming a hub. Nobody would imagine a transshipment hub appearing there because there are hardly any local cargo to cushion the impact of low transshipment tariffs. It happened. It happened simply because Colombo, which was handling the Sealand Maersk relay service at that time, had no plans to move forward in tandem with the growth of the shipping lines, the dimensions of the ships. They were planning to launch into services. So they moved into building their own port terminal. And that's how I see it. Strategic partnership is a necessity. And Colombo has come to that juncture where it has to, think about this.
Thank you. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, I have to end this session. Already we exceeded by a minute. Thank you very much for all expert panelists. I think they performed well, right? Give a big round of applause.